Japanese role-playing games known as JRPGs have been a cornerstone of gaming for decades, evolving from strategy-focused classics like Dragon Quest and Chrono Trigger to modern titles that emphasize storytelling and character depth, such as Persona 5 Royal and Final Fantasy XVI. On July 13th, 2018, Square Enix, the creators of Dragon Quest, revisited the genre's roots with the release of Octopath Traveler 1. This game blends traditional mechanics with modern design, debuting the now iconic HD 2D art style that has since become a staple for Square Enix, even influencing recent Dragon Quest remakes. So why revisit Octopath Traveler 1 7 years later in a world crowded with even more JRPGs and a handful of HD 2D games? Firstly, Octopath stands out as the catalyst for the popularity in the HD 2D art style, and is a clear example of realistic games not being the only choice in town. Secondly, reflecting on older games or even recent releases helps us appreciate how gaming has evolved, allowing us to learn from their successes and flaws. Lastly, I see people often say there's nothing to play or no good games when that couldn't be further from the truth. In 2024, Steam alone saw almost 19,000 games released. That's 4,000 more than in 2023. Pair that along with decades of gaming history, there are practically infinite amount of games waiting for you to enjoy. This review, and the many more that come, aims to do just that. Expand your horizons, introduce you to a game you may have overlooked, and provide a deeper insight into the medium as a whole. Welcome to Arcadia Archives and Octopath Traveler. Octopath Traveler 1 is bold, nostalgic, and endearing, successfully invoking the spirit of classic JRPGs while presenting it in a modern package. Its HD 2D art style and traditional mechanics strike a delicate balance between the past and present, appealing to longtime fans of the genre and newcomers alike. But nostalgia alone isn't enough to carry a game, especially one that spans dozens of hours. A truly great JRPG needs substance, engaging gameplay, compelling content, and memorable storytelling to leave a lasting impact. But does Octopath Traveler 1 deliver on these fronts, or does it fall short on its ambitions? A smooth, stable experience can significantly enhance your enjoyment of a game, often without you realizing it. I played Octopath Traveler 1 on PC via Steam, and as a 7-year-old game, it ran flawlessly. I recorded, streamed, and played for hours on end without a single issue or stutter, and I can't imagine other platforms struggling either. It's simply not a demanding game. This level of performance ensures you focus on the game itself with no distraction from technical hiccups. Complementing its stability are snappy menus and fast load times. Despite being a strategy-heavy JRPG, the game responds instantly to inputs, making controls feel intuitive and second nature. The button layout is also customizable and works well on a keyboard, though I'd recommend playing on a controller for the best experience personally. As for bugs, none. Not one disrupted my playthrough, a rarity compared to most modern releases where glitches often break immersion. With its polished performance, responsive controls, and rock-steady stability, Octopath Traveler 1 sets the stage for an experience that lets its mechanics, story, and role take center stage. Now that we've covered the foundation, let's dive into what truly defines the core of a game, its gameplay and content. Most modern JRPGs push or exceed 100 hours for a normal playthrough, so it's non-negotiable for gameplay to be fun and engaging throughout. Octopath Traveler's gameplay is split into two key parts: exploration/management, and combat. Let's start with exploration, as it naturally feeds into combat. Between story beats and quests, you'll traverse a variety of locations: cities, caves, deserts, forests, and mountains, collecting items, upgrading gear, and completing tasks. Some quests require character-specific actions, which is where Octopath's 8 protagonists come into play. Each character has a unique role in combat and their own actions or passives. For example, Cyrus the Scholar exceeds in elemental magic and can use his Scrutinize ability to uncover secrets, unlock special weapons in shops, and get discounts at inns. These abilities add flavor and depth, pushing the characters beyond traditional archetypes like healer or tank. However, not all actions are equally useful, and some feel underwhelming outside of mandatory story quests. Exploration benefits greatly from the game's stunning visuals, which I will touch on later, but struggles to maintain variety. It rarely introduces new mechanics, shops, or features which can lead to stagnation. One exception is the sub-job system, however. Each character starts with a primary class, but discovering shrines across the world allows you to assign secondary jobs, unlocking new abilities, passes, and weapon proficiencies. This system adds meaningful customization and depth, making experimentation very rewarding. Now on to combat, where Octopath Traveler truly shines. While it's rooted in traditional turn-based systems, it introduces unique mechanics. Turn order, for instance, is determined by character speed and other factors, creating a dynamic flow that forces you to strategize. You can manipulate the order with the new break system. Every enemy has a weakness and a shield value. Hitting their weak points reduces the shield, and when it reaches 0, they enter a broken state. During this state, they are stunned for a full turn and take double damage, giving you a chance to control the battlefield. The combat also features a battle point system. Each character gains 1 battle point per turn, which can be stored and used to enhance abilities, either boosting their power or turning single hits into multi-attacks. Experimenting with class combinations and battle point strategies is immensely satisfying, and the combat's depth and creativity kept me engaged throughout. After each encounter, you will gain loot, XP, and job points to further develop your party. While the combat system is engaging, the game's difficulty leans heavily towards the easier side. While that might appeal to casual players, it could frustrate those seeking a challenge or veterans of the genre. My issue with the difficulty is it seems to prioritize long dragged out fights instead of ones that either put you on the back foot or you're back against the wall. Boss battles in particular are the worst offenders, often feeling artificially prolonged, with mechanics seem designed to waste your time rather than test your skills. For example, some bosses have phases where they become invulnerable or summon adds, dragging out the fight without adding any meaningful complexity. This lack of challenge can make the combat feel less rewarding over time, especially for seasoned JRPG players. Unfortunately, Octopath Traveler doesn't offer much incentive for additional playthroughs, especially when compared to a beloved title like Fire Emblem Three Houses. The difference is night and day. Three Houses offers drastically different narratives depending on which house you chose at the beginning of the game, while Octopath offers nothing at all. While the sub-job system and character-specific actions provide some variety, the core experience remains largely the same regardless of your party composition. The lack of meaningful character interactions or branching storylines further limits the appeal of replaying the game. Once you've completed the 8 character arcs and optional content, there's little reason to return, as the game doesn't introduce new challenges, alternate endings, or significant post-game content to keep players engaged. However, it should be noted that one playthrough would be enough to satisfy most people. While the combat is a clear highlight, the content structure falters. Most main story quests follow the same repetitive formula. A short cutscene sets up a problem, leading to a nearby dungeon, forest, cave, or similar, followed with random encounters. At the end, you face a challenging boss that could be long and dragged out, then return to the quest starting point to wrap things up. This rinse and repeat structure grows tiresome very quickly, especially as the main story takes over 60 hours to complete. While the combat system undoubtedly makes Octopath Traveler worth experiencing, the repetitive quest design prevents it from maintaining consistent engagement throughout its lengthy runtime. But what about the story, characters, and writing? Let's see if they can make up for the lost ground. One of the hallmarks of the modern JRPG is their ability to deliver intricate writing that weaves characters and settings into a cohesive, compelling story. Unfortunately, Octopath Traveler falls far short of this standard. When a game is marketed around the idea of 8 playable characters whose paths intersect, players naturally expect meaningful interactions and interconnected storylines. Instead, Octopath Traveler delivers shallow, underwhelming exchanges. The most you'll get is a 20-second micro scene where one character briefly acknowledges another with a simple "neat" or "me too," and that's about it. It's a far cry from the rich and layered dynamics of Persona's social links or Fire Emblem support conversations. This disconnect deepens during the character chapters too. Cutscenes focus solely on the character whose story is being told, while the rest of the party is entirely absent. This isolation robs the narrative of opportunities for dynamic interactions, like one character reacting differently to a scenario than another. These small details could have made the world feel alive and add up, but their absence leaves it disjointed and lifeless, honestly. Nothing ties these stories together, and events in one chapter rarely, if ever, impact the next. This lack of cohesion is easily the game's most disappointing aspect, and it's apparent right from the first chapters. Each introduction follows the same rigid tire formula. You meet a character in a town or a city, watch a lengthy backstory flashback, experience a tragedy or conflict in said flashback, help them resolve it before they embark on their adventure. While this structure has potential, it feels repetitive and often half-baked, with many arcs failing to deliver convincing or impactful narratives even at the ending of Chapter 1. That said, there is one standout: Therion the Rogue. His story begins him with being duped into retrieving a dragonstone by a manipulative innkeeper who's been set up by the butler of the manor, only to be cursed with a bracelet of shame that forces him to recover the remaining stones to redeem himself. It's an engaging premise, and Therion's act initially stands out. Unfortunately, even his story loses momentum after the second chapter, and the same can be said for the rest of the cast. The one point of praise I can give is how distinct each character feels, in their speech, dialect, and personality. It adds a touch of individuality, but that alone isn't enough to salvage the experience. Beyond these surface details, the narrative feels hollow, and the potential of 8 unique stories intertwining is squandered. This lack of narrative depth leaves a significant void in the overall experience. But where the story falters, does Octopath shine elsewhere? Let's step back and take a look at how the game presents itself beyond the written word. In a genre where games often span dozens, if not hundreds of hours, the ability to keep players visually and orally engaged is crucial. Octopath Traveler 1 exceeds in this regard, delivering a presentation that is as memorable as it is innovative. Its HD 2D art style, a blend of pixel art and modern graphic effects, is nothing short of breathtaking. This unique approach bridges the gap between the nostalgic charm of classic JRPGs and the technical prowess of modern gaming, creating a visual identity that feels both timeless and fresh. Every environment in Octopath Traveler is meticulously crafted, from the sun-draped forests of the woodlands to the snow-capped peaks of the frostlands. The use of depth of field lighting, dynamic shadows, and particle effects adds a layer of sophistication to the pixel art, making each location feel alive and immersive. The game's camera also deserves praise, with dynamic angles during key moments like entering a boss arena or discovering a hidden path, adding a cinematic flair to the experience. While the environments themselves can feel repetitive over time due to a lack of new mechanics or landmarks, the sheer beauty of the visuals ensures that exploration remains a treat for the eyes. The soundtrack, composed by Yoshihiro Nishiki, is another standout feature. I hope I said that right. The music perfectly complements the game's tone, with sweeping orchestra pieces for dramatic moments and sincere melodies for quieter scenes, elevating the emotional impact of the game's world and battles. The soundtrack not only enhances the atmosphere, but also reinforces the game's identity as a love letter to classic JRPGs. It's a score that always stays with you long after you put the controller down. Sound design, while less flashy, is equally effective. The clank of swords, the crackle of magic, and the ambient sounds of nature all contribute to the game's immersive quality. Voice acting, as previously touched, though limited, is well executed, with each character's voice reflecting their personality and background, if even their writing falls short. For example, Therion's sardonic tone and Primrose's dignified demeanor are conveyed perfectly. With its breathtaking HD 2D art style, immersive soundtrack, and polished presentation, Octopath Traveler 1 is a feast for the senses. But how do these elements contribute to the overall experience? Let's turn to the final verdict. These days, Octopath Traveler 1 is often available at a discount, making it more reasonable to pick up for JRPG fans, particularly those who enjoy turn-based combat and retro-inspired visuals. At its original $60 price point, however, the game is a way harder sell, but with its frequent sales, it becomes a more appealing option for players looking for a lengthy, visually striking adventure. That said, while Octopath Traveler 1 succeeds in capturing the charm of classic JRPGs, it struggles to innovate in meaningful ways. Its disjointed storytelling and weak character writing prevent it from reaching the emotional highs of more narrative cohesive RPGs. The repetitive quests and story structure also drag down the experience, making progression feel more formulaic rather than engaging. If you value rich, interconnected stories like Persona 5 Royal or the Final Fantasy series, Octopath may leave you disappointed. However, if you can overlook its narrative shortcomings, there's still plenty to appreciate. Their strategic, flexible combat system, often rewarding depth, the HD 2D art style is gorgeous, and the soundtrack is a standout, elevating the game's atmosphere. These elements make it worth considering for those who enjoy turn-based RPGs and are willing to focus on gameplay over story. In the end, Octopath Traveler 1 is a game with strong foundations, but one that ultimately falls short of greatness. It offers a nostalgic yet modernized take on classic JRPGs, but its flaws, particularly in storytelling and quest design, prevent it from being a must-play for everyone. My final score is a 6 out of 10, slightly above average. I recommend it for those who are turn-based combat enthusiasts or fans of retro aesthetics, and maybe hardcore JRPG fans. It's a solid game, but not an essential one. At some point, I do plan to tackle Octopath Traveler 2, but I feel like I got my fill with Octopath 1. I hope that the sequel does innovate on the storytelling, some of the repetitive mechanics, and some of the nitpicks here and there that I've discussed here in this review. But with that being said, I've been Satori Rave, and this is the Arcadia Archive for Octopath Traveler 1.